The starship Horizon's Edge moved slowly through the darkness of space. Its silver body reflected the light of distant stars as it approached the massive structure known as Station Omega. Captain Park Do-yeon stood at the front window of the bridge, his hands folded behind his back. He had waited 3 years for this moment. Humanity was finally going to join the Galactic Federation. "Captain, we are receiving docking permission," said Lieutenant Kim Yuna from her station. She was a young woman with sharp eyes and a quick mind. Her fingers moved across the control panel with practiced ease. "Good," Do-yeon said. "Tell Ambassador Lee to prepare. We arrive in 20 minutes." The station grew larger in the window. It was shaped like a giant wheel, spinning slowly in the void. Lights blinked across its surface like fireflies. Ships of every shape and size floated around it. Some looked like insects. Others looked like floating stones. A few had no shape that made sense to human eyes. Ambassador Lee Tae-ho joined them on the bridge. He was an older man with gray hair and a calm face. He had spent his whole life preparing for this day. First contact with alien life had happened 30 years ago. Since then, humans had been learning, studying, and proving themselves worthy of joining the galactic community. 47 species, Tae-ho said quietly. And today, we become the 48th. The docking was smooth. The airlock opened with a soft hiss, and the human delegation stepped onto Station Omega for the first time. The air smelled strange, like metal and flowers mixed together. The walls curved in odd ways, designed for creatures who did not think like humans. A tall being waited for them. It had 6 legs and a body covered in blue scales. Its translator device spoke in a flat, mechanical voice. "Welcome, humans. I am Delegate Voss of the Council. Please follow me." They walked through wide hallways filled with aliens of every kind. Some floated. Some crawled. Some walked on dozens of tiny legs. Many stopped to stare at the humans. Do-yeon felt their eyes on him, curious and uncertain. The council chamber was enormous. Hundreds of seats rose in circles around a central platform. Each seat held a representative from a different species. The humans were led to a small section near the bottom. They sat down and waited. The first few hours went well. Speaker Mora, an amphibian creature with wet green skin, welcomed humanity to the Federation. Several delegates offered words of greeting. It seemed like everything would go smoothly. Then the Valorians arrived. They entered through a side door, and the chamber fell silent. The Valorians were beautiful in a terrifying way. Their bodies were made of living crystal, catching the light and throwing rainbows across the walls. They moved without sound, gliding across the floor like ghosts. Their leader was called High Arbiter Kel. He was taller than the others, sharp edges and a face that showed no emotion. He stopped in the center of the chamber and pointed one crystal finger at the humans. "These creatures must be removed," Kel said. His voice was like breaking glass. "They are contaminated. They are dangerous. They should not be here." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Ambassador Lee stood up slowly. "High Arbiter," he said, keeping his voice calm. "I do not understand." "What contamination do you speak of?" Kel's crystal face turned toward him. "Your bodies, they are filled with a deadly acid, a substance that destroys everything it touches. You carry death inside you, and you dare to enter this sacred place." Tae-ho frowned. "What substance?" "Water," Kel said. "You are made of water," the chamber erupted. Delegates shouted in fear and confusion. Several species began moving away from the human section. Guards appeared near the doors. Lieutenant Yuna leaned toward Captain Do-yeon. "Water is corrosive to silicon-based life forms," she whispered. "To the Valorians, it really is like acid." Do-yeon understood. But he also saw the fear spreading through the chamber like fire. This was not about science. This was about terror. Speaker Mora raised a hand for silence. "High Arbiter Kel, please explain further." Kel waved his hand, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed water eating through crystal structures, dissolving metal, destroying organic tissue. The images were dramatic and frightening. "This poison flows through human veins," Kel said. "It fills their eyes. It drips from their skin. They are walking weapons, and they do not even know it. Several delegates called for immediate quarantine. Others demanded the humans leave the station. Ambassador Lee tried to speak, but his voice was lost in the noise. Finally, Speaker Mora made a decision. The human delegation will be moved to an isolated section of the station until this matter can be resolved. This is for everyone's safety. Do-yeon wanted to argue, but Tai-ho placed a hand on his arm. Not now, the ambassador said quietly. We must be patient. The humans were escorted to a small section on the far side of the station. The doors sealed behind them. Guards stood outside. They were not prisoners, but they were not free either. That night, Lieutenant Yuna could not sleep. She walked through their temporary quarters, checking systems, reviewing data. Something felt wrong. The air was different somehow. Drier, she pulled up the environmental readings on her tablet and froze. The humidity in their section was dropping fast. Someone had changed the settings. Captain, she called out. We have a problem. Do-yeon appeared beside her, his face serious. He looked at the readings and his jaw tightened. They're trying to dry us out, he said. Yuna nodded. At this rate, we will start feeling effects within hours. Serious effects within 2 days. Do-yeon looked toward the sealed doors. Somewhere out there, among the crystals and scales and strange creatures, someone wanted them dead. Not because of what they had done, but because of what they were made of. He turned back to his crew. Find out who is doing this, and find a way to stop it. The first day on Station Omega had just become a fight for survival. Dr. Baek Jisoo pressed her fingers against the neck of a young crew member. His pulse was weak. His lips were cracked. His skin felt like paper. Drink this, she said, handing him a small cup of water. It was from their emergency supplies. They did not have much left. 12 hours had passed since Lieutenant Yuna discovered the sabotage. The humidity in their section had dropped to dangerous levels. Humans needed water in the air to breathe properly. Without it, their bodies began to fail. Captain Do-yeon stood near the sealed door, watching his crew suffer. Ambassador Lee sat in a corner, his face pale and tired. Even the strongest among them were feeling the effects. How much time do we have? Do-yeon asked Dot. Dr. Baek looked up from her patient. At this rate, maybe 36 hours. After that, organ damage begins. Kidneys, first. Then everything else. Engineer Choi Sun-woo was working on a control panel near the wall. His fingers moved quickly, pulling wires and checking connections. Sweat covered his face, though the air was bone dry. I found the source, he said finally. The environmental controls for this section have been locked out. Someone with high-level access did this. Can you fix it? Do-yeon asked. Sun-woo shook his head. Not from here. The main controls are in the station's central hub. We would need to get there physically. Yes. The doors are sealed, Yuna reminded them. And there are guards outside. Ambassador Lee pushed himself to his feet. He moved slowly, like an old man, though he was only in his 50s. Then we must ask for help. I will request an emergency audience with the council. They will not listen, Do-yeon said. They are afraid of us. Then we must make them listen. Tai-ho's voice was weak but firm. Fear can be overcome with truth. We must show them what we really are. The request was granted, though it took 6 more hours. By the time the humans entered the council chamber again, several of them could barely walk. Dr. Baek supported a sick crew member on her shoulder. Yuna's hands were shaking. Even Captain Do-yeon felt the world spinning around him. The chamber was fuller than before. Word had spread across the station that the humans were dying. Some came to watch out of curiosity. Others came because they were worried. A few came because they hoped to see the water creatures finally fall. Speaker Mora called for silence. The human delegation has requested to address the council. Ambassador Lee, you may speak. Tai-ho stepped forward. His voice cracked from dehydration, but he forced himself to stand tall. Honored council members, he began, we come before you not as enemies, but as fellow travelers in this vast universe. We did not choose to be made of water. It is simply what we are. Just as you did not choose your forms, we did not choose ours. High Arbiter Kell rose from his seat. Pretty words cannot change biology. Your bodies contain a substance that would kill half the species in this chamber. You are a threat simply by existing. Then let us show you the truth, Taiho said. He turned to Yuna. Lieutenant, if you please. Yuna stepped forward. In her hand was a small bottle made of clear plastic. Inside was ordinary water. Nothing special. Just water. The chamber erupted in panic. Delegates screamed and fled from their seats. Guards rushed forward with weapons raised. Several species pressed themselves against the walls, trying to get as far from the human woman as possible.
Ow.
She has a weapon. Someone shouted, "Contain her." "Contain her now?" Kel's crystal voice cut through the chaos. "You see, they bring their poison into our sacred hall. This is an act of war." Speaker Mora raised both hands. Silence. Everyone's silence. The amphibian's voice echoed through the chamber. Slowly, the panic faded. Guards surrounded Yuna, but did not touch her. "Human," Mora said carefully. "What is your intention?" Yuna looked at the bottle in her hand. Such a simple thing. On Earth, children played with water. Farmers prayed for it. Lovers walked in the rain together. And here, in this room full of alien beings, it was treated like a nuclear bomb. "I want to show you something," she said. "May I?" Mora hesitated. The fate of humanity hung on this moment. Finally, the speaker nodded. "Proceed." But slowly, Yuna lifted the bottle. Every eye in the chamber watched her. Some delegates covered their faces. Others held their breath. High Arbiter Kel's crystal body seemed to grow sharper, ready to shatter her if she made a wrong move. She opened the cap. The sound was tiny, just a soft click of plastic. But in that silent chamber, it was like thunder. Then Kim Yuna raised the bottle to her lips and drank. She swallowed once, twice, 3 times. Water ran down her chin. She wiped her mouth with the back of her hand and smiled. "On my planet," she said, "we call this refreshing." No one moved. No one breathed. They stared at the human woman who had just swallowed what they believed was deadly poison. They waited for her to scream, to dissolve, to die in agony. But Yuna just stood there, alive and healthy, water glistening on her lips. "High Arbiter," Kel's voice broke the silence. "Impossible. This is some trick." "No trick," Dr. Beak said, stepping forward. "Water is not our poison. It is our life. Our blood is mostly water. Our tears are water. Without it, we die. That is why your sabotage is killing us right now. You are taking away the very thing that keeps us alive." The chamber was silent. Delegates looked at each other in confusion. Everything they believed about humans was crumbling before their eyes. Then Kel spoke again, and his words sent ice through every human heart. "You speak of sabotage," he said, "but I speak of evidence. A Valorian patrol has intercepted a human cargo ship carrying massive quantities of weaponized water. Your people planned to attack us. We have proof." Ambassador Lee's face went pale. "That is not possible. The ship is called Dawn Treader," Kel continued. "It carries enough water to destroy every crystal being in the Federation. Your peaceful words mean nothing, Ambassador. We have seen your true intentions." The council began to murmur again. Fear returned to their eyes. Captain Doyon stepped forward, his voice strong, despite his weakening body. "Then show us this evidence. Let us see this ship. Let the truth be revealed." Kel smiled. It was a cold smile, like light bouncing off ice. "Gladly," he said. The cargo ship Dawn Treader floated in the docking bay, surrounded by Valorian guards. It was a simple vessel, built for carrying supplies to distant colonies. There was nothing special about it. Nothing dangerous. At least that was what Captain Yun Murray kept telling herself. She stood on the bridge with her small crew, watching the alien soldiers through the window. They had been boarded 6 hours ago. No violence. Just cold crystal faces and weapons pointed at their heads. "Captain," said crewman Han Jung-woo. He was barely 20 years old, with nervous eyes and shaking hands. "What are they going to do with us?" "I do not know," Murray admitted, "but we have done nothing wrong." We are carrying relief supplies, food, medicine, water for the colony on Kepler 7. They keep calling the water a weapon, Jungwoo said. Mireille shook her head. Fear makes people see weapons everywhere, even in a cup of drinking water. Back on Station Omega, the council had gathered for an emergency session. The humans were there too, still weak from dehydration, but determined to fight. Ambassador Lee demanded that the cargo manifest be reviewed publicly. If we are criminals, Taiho said, then show everyone our crime. Let the truth be seen. High Arbiter Kell agreed immediately. He seemed confident. Too confident, the manifest appeared on the chamber's main display. Lists of supplies scrolled across the screen. Emergency rations, medical equipment, hydration packs. And at the bottom, in large letters, fresh water, 50,000 liters. 50,000 liters, Kell announced. Enough to melt every Valorian colony in 3 systems. This is not relief. This is genocide. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Even Speaker Mora looked troubled. The water was for human colonists, Ambassador Lee said. They are suffering from drought. Their wells have dried up. Without this water, thousands will die. A convenient story, Kell replied. But we have more evidence, he waved his hand. And new images appeared. Documents, communications, a message that appeared to come from Earth's government, discussing strategic water deployment against crystal-based life forms. Captain Doyen stared at the screen. The documents looked real. The signatures looked authentic. But something was wrong. He could feel it. These are fake, he said. Kell laughed. It was a harsh sound, like glass breaking. Of course you would say that. But the evidence speaks for itself. Lieutenant Yuna was already working on her tablet. She had been studying the documents since they appeared, comparing them to known human communication formats. Her eyes narrowed. Captain, she whispered, the timestamps are wrong. These documents are dated 3 weeks ago, but they use an encryption format that we only started using 2 weeks ago. Someone created these after the fact. Can you prove it? I need access to the station's communication logs. If these messages really pass through human channels, there will be a record. Engineer Choi stepped closer. I can get you access, but not from here. We need to reach the station's central hub. The humans looked at each other. They were surrounded by guards. They were weak from dehydration. And the entire Federation was ready to condemn them based on lies, but they were not ready to give up. Speaker Mora, Ambassador Lee said loudly, I request permission for our technical team to verify this evidence. Surely, if the documents are real, verification will only prove your case stronger. Mora considered this. Several delegates nodded. Even some who feared humans believed in fair process. Granted, Mora said. But you will be escorted. And if you attempt anything suspicious, the consequences will be severe. 2 hours later, Yuna and Sunwoo stood in the station's central communication hub. It was a massive room filled with glowing screens and humming machines. Alien technicians watched them suspiciously as they worked. Sunwoo's fingers flew across the controls. He was not just checking communication logs. He was searching for the source of the sabotage, tracking the commands that had tried to kill his crewmates. Found something, he said quietly. Yuna looked at his screen. A series of commands hidden deep in the station's systems. Environmental changes to the human quarters, falsified communication records, even edits to the original cargo manifest of the Dawn Treader. All of them originated from the same source, a Valorian diplomatic terminal. They planned this, Yuna breathed. All of it, the sabotage, the fake evidence. They wanted to destroy us. But why? Sunwoo asked. Yuna kept digging. More files appeared. Reports about a newly discovered planet, a world with vast oceans and rich crystal deposits. The Valorians wanted to claim it, but Federation rules required shared exploration of new worlds. With humans in the Federation, they would have to share. Unless there are no humans to share with, Yuna said grimly. They copied everything. Every file. Every log. Every piece of evidence that proved the Valorian conspiracy. When they returned to the council chamber, High Arbiter Kel was still speaking. He was describing the danger humans posed, painting pictures of water raining down on innocent crystal beings. "May I speak?" Yuna asked. Kel stopped. His crystal face turned toward her with contempt. "You have nothing worth saying. Let her speak," Speaker Mora commanded. Yuna stepped forward and connected her tablet to the main display. The evidence appeared for everyone to see. The fake documents, the sabotage commands, the secret reports about the ocean planet. "High Arbiter Kel," she said calmly, "you did not fear us because we are dangerous. You feared us because we stood in the way of what you wanted." The chamber exploded. Delegates shouted questions. The Lorian guards moved toward Kel, then hesitated. Kel himself stood frozen, his crystal body flickering with inner light. "Lies," he said, but his voice had lost its power. "Human lies." "Then explain the time stamps," Sun Wu said. "Explain the origin codes. Explain why every piece of fake evidence came from your personal terminal." Kel had no answer. Speaker Mora rose from the central platform. "High Arbiter Kel, you are relieved of your position. You will be held for questioning." Guards moved in. Kel tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. His crystal body scraped against the floor as they dragged him away. The chamber fell silent. Dozens of alien faces turned toward the humans. There was confusion in their eyes, shame, and perhaps for the first time, respect. "The human delegation is cleared of all charges," Mora announced. "The cargo ship Dawn Treader will be released, and the environmental sabotage will be reversed immediately." Ambassador Lee bowed his head. "Thank you, Speaker." Captain Doyon knew this was not over. They had won the battle, but trust was not given so easily. The Federation still feared them. They would need to prove themselves again and again. He looked at his tired, dehydrated crew and felt proud. They had faced death and lies and still stood tall. "Let us go home," he said softly. "We have work to do." The days after Kel's arrest were strange and difficult. The humans were no longer prisoners, but they were not welcome either. Delegates stepped aside when they walked past. Conversations stopped when they entered rooms. Fear was hard to forget. Captain Doyon spent most of his time in meetings. Ambassador Lee worked around the clock, talking to every delegate who would listen. They explained human biology. They shared their history. They tried to build bridges over an ocean of misunderstanding. Some species listened. The amphibian people, led by Speaker Mora, were curious about humans. They lived in water too, in their own way. They understood that what was poison to one could be life to another, but others remained afraid. A group of silicon-based species refused to be in the same room as humans. A delegation of fire-dwelling creatures worried that human water could extinguish their entire civilization. Fear had many faces. Meanwhile, on the Dawn Treader, Captain Yun Mai finally received permission to continue her journey. The relief supplies were badly needed. Thousands of colonists on Kepler 7 were waiting. "Thank you for your patience," Speaker Mora said during the release ceremony. "And for your courage." Murray smiled. "We are humans. Patience and courage are all we have." She looked at crewman Han Jung-woo, who stood beside her. The young man had grown during their captivity. His eyes were steadier now. His hands no longer shook. "Ready to go home?" she asked. "Yes, Captain," he said. "But first, I want to see this station one more time. I want to remember." They walked through the corridors together, past alien beings, who stared at them with wonder and worry. Jung-woo stopped at a window overlooking the docking bay. Hundreds of ships floated in the darkness, each one carrying creatures from a different world. "We are so small," he said quietly. "So small in such a big universe." Irene nodded. "Small, but not alone. Not anymore." Back in the council chamber, Lieutenant Yuna presented her full report on the Valorian conspiracy. It was worse than anyone had imagined. Kel had not acted alone. A faction within the Valorian government had planned the operation for months. They had agents across the station. They had bribed officials. They had prepared for every possibility except one: the humans fighting back. "They underestimated us," Yuna said. They thought we would accept our fate. They thought we would die quietly in the dark. Why did they want the ocean planet so badly? A delegate asked. Dr. Beak answered this question. The planet contains crystals essential for Valorian reproduction. Without new sources of these crystals, their population will decline within 3 generations. They were desperate. Desperate enough to commit murder, Ambassador Lee added. Desperate enough to destroy an entire species. The council debated for hours. Some wanted harsh punishment for all Valorians. Others argued that only the conspirators should be held responsible. The humans themselves called for moderation. Punishing all Valorians for the crimes of a few would make us no better than Kel, Captain Doyan said. We ask only for justice, not revenge. This surprised many delegates. They expected humans to be angry. They expected demands for blood. Instead, they heard words of peace. Speaker Mora looked at the human captain with new eyes. You would show mercy to those who tried to kill you. Doyan thought about his crew, thought about the long hours of suffering, thought about watching his people slowly dry out, their bodies failing one cell at a time. Mercy is not weakness, he said finally. It is strength. Anyone can hate. Anyone can destroy. But it takes courage to forgive. The chamber was silent. Many delegates had never heard such words from a species so young, so new to the galaxy. They had expected primitive aggression. Instead, they found wisdom. The final verdict was measured. The conspirators would face trial. The Valorian government would pay compensation to the affected human colonies, and the ocean planet would be designated as a shared research zone, open to all Federation species. But the most important decision was yet to come. The human delegation has proposed something unusual, Speaker Mora announced. They wish to lead a joint mission to the ocean planet. They offer to work alongside other species, including water-sensitive ones, to establish a shared colony. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Work with humans? Share a planet with creatures made of acid? We know you are afraid, Ambassador Lee said, stepping forward. We understand your fear. Water has hurt your kind before. It has destroyed things you love. But fear should not rule us. Fear should not keep us apart. He paused, looking around at the hundreds of alien faces. On Earth, we have a saying, still waters run deep. It means that calm surfaces can hide great strength, great wisdom, great beauty. We ask you to look beneath your fear. See us for what we truly are, not monsters, not weapons. Just living beings, trying to find our place in the universe. Engineer Choi stepped forward next. I have designed containment systems that would allow water-sensitive species to work safely alongside humans. Sealed environments, protective suits, emergency protocols. We can make this work. You would do this? A Valorian delegate asked. She was younger than Kel, with softer edges and curious eyes. After what we did to you? Especially after what you did to us, Choi replied. Because if we can work together after this, we can work together through anything. The vote was not unanimous. Many species abstained. Several voted against. But enough voted in favor to pass the resolution. Humanity would lead the mission to New Dawn. That night, Captain Doyan stood alone in the observation deck of Station Omega. Stars filled the window like scattered diamonds. Somewhere out there was Earth. Somewhere else was New Dawn, waiting to be explored. Dr. Beak found him there an hour later. You should rest, she said. Tomorrow we'll be busy. I know, he replied. I just needed a moment. She stood beside him, looking at the stars. Do you think they will ever truly accept us? She asked. Duhayan thought about the question for a long time. Maybe not all of them, he said finally. Maybe not right away. But we have taken the first step, and first steps matter. Beak nodded. My grandmother used to say something similar. She said that every river starts with a single drop of water. Doyan smiled. It was the first real smile he had felt in days. Then let us be that first drop, he said, and see where the river takes us. Outside the window, the stars continued their ancient dance, and somewhere in the darkness, a new world was waiting. 6 months had passed since the trial. 6 months since humanity nearly died on Station Omega. 6 months since everything changed. Lieutenant Kim. Yuna stood on a cliff overlooking the great ocean of New Dawn. Waves crashed against rocks far below, sending spray into the morning air. The water was blue and green and gold, reflecting the light of a foreign sun. It was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. Behind her, the colony was waking up. Dome-shaped buildings rose from the rocky shore, each one designed to house different species. Some were filled with water for the amphibian researchers. Others were completely dry for the silicon beings. And in the center stood the human quarters, comfortable and warm. Beautiful, is it not? Yuna turned to see a young Valorian standing beside her. Her name was Sira. She was one of the first crystal beings to volunteer for the joint mission. Her edges were smooth and rounded, unlike Kel's sharp angles. She wore a protective suit that Engineer Choi had designed, keeping all water away from her crystalline body. It is, Yuna agreed. On Earth, we have oceans like this. I used to swim in them when I was a child. Swim? Sira tilted her head. You mean, you enter the water willingly? Yuna laughed. It was still strange to explain human behavior to aliens. More than willingly, we love it. Children play in water. Athletes race through it. Some people spend their whole lives studying it. Sira was quiet for a moment. When I was young, we were taught that water was death, pure destruction. Nothing good could come from it. She looked at the ocean below. Now I am not so sure. In the medical center, Dr. Beek Jisoo was teaching a class. Alien physicians sat in rows before her, taking notes on tablets and devices of every shape. She was explaining human biology, using holograms to show how water moved through the human body. The average human adult contains about 40 liters of water, she said. It exists in our blood, our cells, our organs. Without it, we die within days. A physician from the fire-dwelling species raised a tentacle. How do you contain it? How does it not leak out? Beek smiled. Our skin is remarkably good at holding things in. We do lose water through sweat and breath, which is why we must constantly drink more. But for the most part, our bodies are very efficient at keeping our water inside. Remarkable, the physician said. On our world, water would destroy us in seconds, and yet you are built entirely around it. Different worlds create different life, Beek replied. That is the beauty of the universe. There is no single way to exist. Across the colony, Engineer Choi Sunwoo was testing his latest invention. It was a vehicle designed for underwater exploration, but with special compartments for water-sensitive species. Crystal beings could ride inside sealed chambers, observing the ocean without ever touching a drop. Try the pressure seal again, he said to his assistant. Crewman Han Jung-woo, the young man had grown tall over the past months. His nervous energy had transformed into quiet confidence. He worked alongside aliens every day now, barely noticing their strange shapes and stranger customs. Seal is holding, Jung-woo reported. Pressure stable at all levels. Sunwoo nodded with satisfaction. Good. Tomorrow, we take it down to the Crystal Caves. The Crystal Caves were the reason the Valorians wanted this planet so badly. Deep beneath the ocean, massive formations of reproductive crystals grew in the warm currents. They were essential for Valorian survival, and now they would be harvested carefully, shared fairly. Protected for future generations, Ambassador Lee Tai-ho had retired from active diplomacy. But he still lived on New Dawn. He spent his days writing, recording the history of first contact for future generations. Sometimes aliens came to visit him, curious about the human who had spoken so calmly in the face of death. Were you not afraid? A young amphibian asked him one afternoon. When they called for your exile? When they tried to kill your people? Tai-ho poured 2 cups of tea, a human custom he had introduced to the colony. The amphibian accepted the cup with webbed hands, sniffing it curiously. Of course I was afraid, Tai-ho admitted. Fear is natural, but fear cannot guide us. If we let fear make our decisions, we would never leave our homes. We would never meet new people. We would never discover new worlds. He took a sip of his tea. The Valorians feared us because they did not understand us. and we might have feared them if things had gone differently. But understanding defeats fear. Knowledge defeats ignorance. That is why this colony matters. Not for the crystals, not for the science, but for the chance to truly know each other. The amphibian considered this wisdom, then took a careful sip of tea. Its eyes widened. "This is interesting," it said. "What do you call this?" "Green tea," Taiho replied. "Made with hot water." The amphibian looked at its cup with new respect. "Water can create such things." "Water can create anything," Taiho said. "Life, art, friendship, it all depends on how you use it." That evening, the entire colony gathered on the shore for a celebration. It was the anniversary of their arrival on New Dawn. Fires burned safely in contained pits. Music played from speakers that translated every rhythm into frequencies all species could enjoy. Captain Park Do-yeon stood at the center, preparing to speak. Around him were faces of every kind: humans, Valorians, amphibians, creatures of fire and stone and light. All of them had come to this distant world together. "1 year ago," he began, "we were strangers. Worse than strangers, we were enemies. You feared what we were made of. We feared your rejection. And some people tried to use that fear to tear us apart." He paused, looking at the ocean behind him. "But we are still here. Together, not because we forgot our differences, but because we chose to see past them. We built suits that let crystal beings walk among water. We designed buildings that keep fire creatures safe. We learned each other's languages, customs, and dreams." Lieutenant Yuna stepped forward, holding a glass of water. The same kind of water that had caused so much fear on Station Omega. "This is what we are made of," she said. "Not a weapon. Not a poison. Just water. The same water that fills this ocean. The same water that makes life possible on countless worlds." She raised the glass. "To New Dawn. To understanding. To the future we build together." She drank, and then, slowly, an amphibian beside her raised its own glass. Then another. Then a fire creature, drinking carefully from a heat-resistant container. Even Sira, the Valorian, raised a sealed tube of nutrient crystals in solidarity. "To New Dawn." They echoed. Captain Do-yeon looked at his crew scattered through the crowd. Dr. Beek was laughing with alien physicians. Engineer Choi was explaining something technical to a group of curious younglings. Ambassador Lee sat quietly, watching with satisfied eyes, and Yuna stood at the water's edge, her face bright with joy. They had come so far. From a small ship called Horizon's Edge to this vast new world. From prisoners to pioneers. From feared outsiders to founding members of something greater than themselves. The sun began to set over the ocean, painting the sky in colors that had no names in any language. Do-yeon walked to the shore and let the waves touch his boots. Cool water soaked through the leather, and he smiled. Behind him, the celebration continued. Aliens and humans together, sharing food and stories and hope. The universe was vast and strange and sometimes terrifying, but moments like this made it all worthwhile. Yuna appeared beside him, holding 2 glasses. "One more toast?" she asked. He took the glass. "What are we toasting?" She looked at the ocean, then at the stars beginning to appear above. "To water," she said. "The thing that makes us human." Do-yeon touched his glass to hers. "To water," he agreed, and together they drank.